Did you know that the FBI once put a batch of handguns through absolute hell-bending trigger guards, tossing pistols like frisbees, and dumping magazine after magazine of live rounds, all in their mission to pick the next official sidearm? But here's the kicker. The winner wasn't the toughest, the most accurate, or even the most reliable on paper. So what happened? In today's video, we're unpacking the wild saga of the FBI's 1987 service pistol trials, a bizarre selection process where 9 different handguns were tortured, tested, and, in some cases, flat-out misunderstood. We'll break down how an underwhelming choice left seasoned firearms experts scratching their heads, and how the real top performer nearly slipped through unnoticed. Some of the testing protocols felt more like circus tricks than legitimate evaluations, yet they somehow played a key role in shaping law enforcement standards nationwide. Each contender faced an intense battery of challenges, but the final verdicts were often swayed by old-school bias, subjective scoring, and a deep-rooted love affair with the .45 SCP. We'll take a close look at all 9 pistols, spotlighting what each one did right, where they fell short, and how the Bureau's decision-making process was far from objective. Let's kick things off with the least impressive model and work our way up to the one that forced the FBI to question its own logic. The Smith & Wesson 459. Next up is the Smith & Wesson 459. At first glance, this 9mm double-action semi-auto looked like it could hold its own. It offered manageable recoil, acceptable accuracy, and a solid, if unspectacular, overall performance in the evaluation rounds. But a few key issues kept it from climbing higher. During one of the field tests, the rear sight literally flew off the slide. Not a great look when you're being graded on reliability and accuracy under stress. And while the pistol's alloy frame helped keep the weight reasonable, it raised eyebrows among evaluators. The FBI flagged the frame as a potential weak point, suggesting it might crack under prolonged hard use. Accuracy-wise, the 459 was decent, nothing to write home about, but good enough for qualification standards. Reliability sat somewhere in the middle. The pistol averaged 1 malfunction for every 500 rounds. That's not catastrophic, but it wasn't good enough to separate itself from the rest of the pack. On the upside, agents familiar with traditional double-action designs liked the layout, and the double-stack magazine provided competitive capacity for that era, especially when high-capacity sidearms were still somewhat novel. But it just couldn't rise above its flaws. The sight failure hurt its credibility, and the long-term durability questions never really went away. And let's not forget, this was a 9mm trying to win over a panel of diehard .45 SCP loyalists. Many evaluators were firmly convinced that only a .45 had the necessary stopping power for duty use. That bias made it nearly impossible for any 9mm entry to break through. In the end, the 459 was a competent service pistol, but not a standout. The Glock 19. Believe it or not, there was a time when the Glock name didn't automatically scream reliability, and that skepticism showed up loud and clear during the FBI's 1987 pistol trials. The Glock 19 took some undeserved hits in scoring, mostly due to agents marking a failure to lock back on an empty magazine as a malfunction. But the truth? That was most likely operator error. A lot of shooters were riding the slide stop lever with their thumbs, which prevented it from engaging, hardly the gun's fault. Another big hurdle was the agency's lack of experience with striker-fired pistols. Most of the evaluators came from a background of heavy double-action first pulls, so the Glock's light and consistent trigger felt foreign, maybe even dangerous. At least one negligent discharge was reported during the testing phase, probably from someone who underestimated just how little pressure was needed to break that trigger. Mechanically, though, the Glock 19 performed admirably. Feeding and extraction were rock solid. Shooters who weren't interfering with the controls found the recoil very manageable and follow-up shots incredibly quick. Its smaller footprint also made it more appealing for agents looking for something compact, but in the 1980s, the idea that bigger is better still had a chokehold on much of law enforcement. Looking back, the lukewarm reaction to the Glock 19 feels out of step with reality. It wasn't the gun that failed, it was the testing protocol and a lack of familiarity. As time would prove, this little polymer-framed pistol would go on to become one of the most dominant handguns in both law enforcement and civilian hands across the United States. The Sig Sauer P226. This is where Sig Sauer really started turning heads. Unlike its big-bore cousin, the 45 ACP model, the Sig P226 chambered in 9mm put up outstanding numbers, especially when it came to long-haul reliability. It pushed past 600 rounds before experiencing a single hiccup, a stat that ranked it near the very top of the reliability chart. Accuracy was also a strong point, though some evaluators took time adjusting to the heavier double-action trigger and the somewhat European-style sights. The pistol's precision machining and balance made it easy to shoot well once you got used to its quirks. Now, it didn't pass every test with flying colors. It struggled in the notorious trigger guard hammer drop test, a brutal and arguably over-the-top stress test that the FBI insisted on running across the board. But aside from that, even agents who were firmly in the 45 or bust camp found themselves impressed with the SIG's performance. Despite all that, the P226 ended up scoring behind several 45 caliber options, probably thanks to a mix of brand unfamiliarity and the foreign gun bias that was still alive and well back then. Some evaluators just weren't ready to trust a European 9mm over a tried-and-true American big bore. But make no mistake, this pistol proved that capacity, shootability, and consistent performance can absolutely outshine raw caliber. Today, the P226 is rightly regarded as one of the finest duty pistols ever produced. The Glock 17. Here's the quiet workhorse that made the biggest impact where it really mattered: the range. During the FBI's qualification course, agents shot their best scores with the Glock 17. Its smooth, predictable trigger and flat recoil made it easy to shoot well, fast. But once again, many of the reported malfunctions were actually just the slide failing to lock back, usually caused by the shooter's grip riding the lever, not any mechanical flaw. Real malfunctions? Basically none. But what did hurt the Glock 17's chances were a few accidental discharges. Again, these came down to a lack of familiarity with a striker-fired trigger that breaks with significantly less effort than a traditional double-action system. It's a shame, because this was the pistol that really had it all. Lightweight polymer construction, a generous 17-round magazine, easy field maintenance, and unmatched simplicity. The Glock 17 didn't need bells and whistles, it just ran. But in the 1980s, that stripped-down design confused a lot of folks used to metal frames and manual safeties. Had the Bureau spent more time educating their shooters on how the platform functioned, they might have seen the Glock 17 for what it really was: a leap forward in combat pistol design. And that's exactly what it became. Not long after these trials wrapped up, the FBI and just about every major police department in the country started adopting Glocks in droves. It may not have topped the FBI's official score sheet in 1987, but looking at what followed, the Glock 17 didn't just meet expectations, it rewrote the playbook. The Smith & Wesson 645. When the FBI wrapped up its 1987 pistol trials, the Smith & Wesson Model 645 walked away with the top honors, though that result still raises eyebrows among those who've looked closely at the actual test data. Chambered in .45 automatic Colt pistol, the 645 won favor largely because of its caliber, not its performance. Many agents clung to the belief that bigger bullets meant better stopping power, and that mindset carried a lot of weight. But despite the buzz around the caliber, the pistol itself came with problems. FBI reports cited recurring issues with the safety lever coming loose, and its overall reliability fell behind several 9mm contenders. While the pistol was praised for its sturdy construction and name-brand familiarity, it never truly excelled in accuracy or long-term endurance. Where the 645 gained ground was in subjective categories, things like perceived stopping power, confidence in the Smith & Wesson brand, and strong factory backing. The first trigger pull in double-action mode was described as heavy by several evaluators, although the single-action follow-ups were smoother and more controllable. In the end, the 645's victory said more about the FBI's preferences than about the gun's capabilities. It was a time when faith in the .45 automatic Colt pistol overshadowed practical concerns like shot placement, capacity, and mechanical consistency. While the pistol checked some boxes, its crown was more a product of tradition than objective performance. The Beretta 92S. Fresh off its success in the military's XM9 selection process, the Beretta 92S entered the FBI trials with a proven track record, and it did not disappoint when it came to performance. This pistol logged close to 1,200 rounds between stoppages, outlasting many of its rivals in pure reliability. That said, The FBI knocked it down for more bureaucratic and logistical reasons. One concern was parts availability since Beretta was based overseas. There were fears about long-term support and supply. Another odd complaint involved the exposed barrel, which some testers believed could pose a burn risk during rapid strings of fire. The double-action trigger was also mentioned as being a bit heavy at the start, though that was fairly common among many trial entries. Even with those concerns, the 92S handled exceptionally well in qualification courses. Testers praised its low recoil, solid balance, and above-average accuracy. When it came to practical shooting, the Beretta clearly belonged in the top tier. Still, the FBI's final scoring did not reflect how well this pistol actually performed. Part of that likely stemmed from a bias toward domestically produced firearms and hesitation over adopting a foreign-made sidearm. Even so, the Beretta 92 would go on to serve with distinction in military and police forces around the world, proving that a solid design often speaks louder than administrative hang-ups. The Sig Sauer P220. On paper, a .45 caliber Sig Sauer should have been a serious contender. But the P220 had a rough go during the FBI's evaluation process. One of the biggest red flags came during drop testing, when the pistol reportedly discharged after hitting the ground. That kind of failure is an instant disqualifier for any service sidearm. The problems didn't stop there. The P220 also struggled with magazine-related malfunctions that raised serious concerns about reliability. Add in a strong recoil impulse and a double-action first trigger pull that several agents found difficult to manage, and it quickly became clear this wasn't the right fit for law enforcement, at least in its tested configuration. That outcome came as a disappointment to many shooters who believed the .45 automatic Colt pistol round still reigned supreme. While the P220 had, and still has, a dedicated civilian following thanks to its rugged build and excellent accuracy, the specific examples tested by the FBI fell short. Reliability issues, especially ones involving magazine feeding, are deal-breakers for duty use. To make matters worse, the agency's infamous hammer test, which involved striking the trigger guard with a mallet, left visible damage to the SIG's frame. While no one expects real-world officers to do that to their sidearms, the FBI was focused on extreme durability, and the SIG simply didn't survive that abuse as well as other competitors. Despite Sig Sauer's otherwise stellar track record, the P220 landed near the bottom of the final rankings, coming in at 8th place. Not the worst performer, but far from what many expected from the storied manufacturer. The Ruger P85. While Ruger's P-Series pistols were known for being rugged and overbuilt, the original P85 didn't live up to that reputation during the 1987 FBI trials. From the outset, reliability was a major concern. One of the test samples experienced serious issues just 500 rounds in, and another barely passed the 1,000-round mark before malfunctioning. In a law enforcement setting, that kind of performance is unacceptable. The FBI did acknowledge the P85 had some redeeming qualities, namely, a budget-friendly price point and decent manufacturer support. But for a duty pistol, neither of those can make up for critical failures during testing. Accuracy was also a weak spot. Compared to its peers, the P85 lagged behind in precision shooting. Its bulky frame and awkward ergonomics made it harder to control, and tester feedback was mixed at best. While Ruger would go on to refine the platform in later models, the original version simply wasn't ready when it mattered most. In a high-stakes evaluation like this one, where real-world reliability and consistency are non-negotiable, the Ruger P85 ended up in last place, and rightfully so. It had potential, but in 1987, it just wasn't ready for duty. And that wraps up our deep dive into the FBI's 1987 handgun trials, a competition that was supposed to identify the best duty pistol for law enforcement, but ultimately revealed more about old-school thinking than actual field performance. The love affair with the .45 automatic Colt pistol and a general resistance to innovation led to some of the most capable designs being overlooked. As time went on, the real winner became clear: Glock's innovative 17, a striker-fired polymer pistol that delivered on reliability, simplicity, and ease of use, eventually earned its rightful place in the hands of professionals everywhere. It just took a little time for the bureaucracy to catch up to the reality on the ground. So how about you? Do you own a Glock 17 or maybe one of the other pistols from these trials? What has your experience been like with them? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, be sure to hit that like button, share the video, and subscribe for more content on firearm history, reviews, and Second Amendment insight. Tap that bell icon so you never miss a post. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.